Hey everyone, Erin the Impatient Gardener coming to you with a part 2 of a garden project. So a couple weeks ago you saw me working on this south side of our driveway, which, as I described at the time, has been a pretty utilitarian space. And I took this kind of, I don't know, the approach I took to dealing with this was to leave a sort of semicircle of grass that can be driven over for bulk load deliveries, things like that, with a kind of horseshoe shaped hedge, if you will, of Russian cypress, Microbiota decussata. And as I talk about in that video, which you can watch, that works because that area is sort of part shade, part sun, like it's not a fully sunny thing, and because I didn't want the formality of a boxwood. But part 2 of this is actually working on the area to the east of that. And that's this shrub border that I started working on 2 years ago now. This whole thing had been grass. And it was just dumb. There was no reason to have grass here. It was just another area for us to mow. A lot of weeds were creeping in from the neighbor's property. It's still an issue, but when it's not grass, I feel like it's a little easier to beat back the weeds on the other side. But this has been sitting here as basically a whole bunch of shrubs dotted in amongst mulch since I removed the grass here. And if you watch the mulch video, you will know that that is not a thing that I like, but that was never the plan. That was just sort of temporary while we get working here on part 2. And part 2 is actually adding in an entire ground cover layer that relies basically on 3 plants. And 2 of those plants, which you just saw me laying out, are Carex. One of them is Carex albicans. This is native to us. Carex albicans is white tinged sedge. Shade to part sun works perfect here. And then Carex montana, not native here, but it is one of my favorite Carexes. It gets this beautiful draping habit to it. And a different color. You can tell the texture and the color of the foliage on these is a little bit different. Listen, I'm not the genius who came up with this. This actually came straight off one of Roy Diblick's Carex videos in which he recommends planting these 2 together. And the way I'm planting these together is not any sort of equal mix. It is supposed to be sort of random. And that is the most difficult planting to do. Planting anything in a random fashion is almost impossible because our brains don't see random. Our brains always, I think, want to create order when we're trying to randomly plant things. That's like why when you're planting bulbs, sometimes it helps to just chuck them, and where they land is where you plant them, because it's very, very hard for us to design randomness. I'm not great at it, but what I did do was create different numbers of clumps of the montana throughout the albicans. So the idea is there's like 3 here and 5 there and maybe 1 here and a couple that sort of trickle out of that, so that it looks like this all occurred naturally. That's the goal. Then I added in a 3rd plant. I only had 6 of them. We'll bulk this up over time. This is not a one and done planting. And that is this native Pachysandra. This is Pachysandra procumbens, Allegheny spurge. Really loving this plant a lot. Like I said, I only had 6 of them, so they're just sort of, I just did a few little clumps kind of at the front. In fact, I actually don't have enough plants to do this at all. I way underestimated the number of plants, and part of that is because I could only find the albicans in this like pint size. I was really hoping to find them in a 2-inch plug size, and I didn't. I will need to get more albicans. Maybe that will happen this year, maybe it won't. But so I sort of focused on this side and more towards the front on this side. But I do want to add that to the back corner there because on the other side of the horseshoe as well, because the idea is that everything outside of the half moon of grass that we are working on growing, and it has germinated, everything outside of that is this ground cover. Now, ideally, I'd plant these even a little closer. I would like to plant these like no more than 12 inches apart, maybe more like 8 inches apart. But honestly, I'm just not going to have enough to even make a dent in this if I do that. So we're gonna plant them a little farther apart than I normally would. They will bulk up and it will take a little time though. But one of the reasons I did the mulch before I did this is because I figured it was way easier to do the mulch and then plant through the mulch rather than try to mulch around these individual grasses. So I'm hopefully going to be able to do this. I've actually been watering this area, so it should be nice and soft. I'm hoping to do this all by hand and just pop these all in. I should have taken them out of the pots as I was throwing them out. That would have made it so much easier, and I didn't even think to do that. But there's not much to this planting other than just cranking them out and getting them in the ground. Let's see, how many plants did we do total? I had those numbers are actually more even than I thought they were going to be. I thought I had way more albicans. Well, whatever. It is what it is. Let's get to planting. If this gets to be a hassle, I will get the auger, but I'm thinking that the pine straw mulch is going to like just bog up on the auger really bad, so I don't want to do that. Hold on. I'm going to get a different planting tool. Longer handle.
Oh, I'm slipping away. So don't let me go, nah, nah, nah. I'm all up in that love haze. So where do we go, nah, nah?
Jumping worm. He will be eliminated. Well, it wasn't the cleanest job in the world, but it's done. Now, you know, I was short by at least, probably had half of what I needed, maybe even less than that. So there's a ways to go on this, but I feel like this is something we can add to over time. But one of the things that I wanted to just mention about why I like this is that this shrub border is not done. When I created this, it was really to have a place to try out some of the new shrubs that come in that don't need full sun. And so my whole plan with this shrub border the whole time was to keep adding to it when plants came up that I wanted to add to it. And I can still do that with this ground cover because I can easily dig these out and move them somewhere else to expand this, move them somewhere else in the yard. It's a very adaptable planting plan, in my opinion. Also, I know a lot of people worry about ground covers because they can have sort of an invasive nature to them. That's one of the reasons why they're considered ground covers, is because they spread to fill the ground. In this case, you never really have to worry about that. These are never, ever, ever going to become invasive in any way. Very easy to dig up and move without having to worry about them coming back after that. So let me show you what we have here so you can get a feel for the space. So I have been watering this, so things are a little shiny, but you can see, you know, in this spot, you can tell, you know, where the Montana is and where the albicans is. Over here is one of the spots where I put in some of that Pachysandra procumbens. And I think you can get a feel for what the idea of this planting plan is going to be. Made it all the way to there, but I did not get to the back area at all, and I definitely did not get to this corner back here. So as these shrubs get bigger and as I add shrubs to this area, it's no problem. I can just adjust the ground cover as I need to. One of the best things about this is that this is basically the lowest maintenance planting I can comprehend. None of the shrubs need anything except for the hydrangeas, which are hydrangea arborescens. Those need a little bit of pruning early in spring, no big deal. Nothing else needs anything. The ground covers, I shouldn't even need to cut those back. They're just going to die back naturally. In winter, I don't think I'll even need to clean up any foliage on those. And that's it. That is all there is to do over here. So when I add new garden spaces, it's nice to add spaces that I know aren't getting added to a list of things I have to do later on. So that's sort of part 2A. I guess 2B, and really finishing this, will be getting some more of these carrots whenever that happens. But it's a good start and I'm happy with it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Maybe this spurred some ideas for you about how to create some really low maintenance areas in your yard, and I hope you're having a great day. Talk to you soon.